Was making tea. Hi, it's good to see you. I was having dinner just now, and I had some lentil soup. I had to finish up my lentil soup, and then I wanted to make some tea before we started, and so I did that, and now I'm ready to begin. When I was at the restaurant having my soup, across from my table were some really nice plants, and so we ate together. And the plants, though, they reminded me of the plants at the meditation retreat I was just at, because I had a seat that faced a bunch of windows that kind of looked onto a slope, just full of beautiful green plants, up in these mountains, like hills in Taiwan. And so often, it was a silent Chan, like Zen retreat. So it was just often felt like just me meditating with the plants. So we had a good time together. I had a good time eating dinner with some plants this evening, and now it is great to see you all. I hope you're all doing well. You're all growing like plants. You're all being taken care of and protected like plants and nourished well. In winter, hello to you. Good evening. For anybody that's new to Brain Tech Support Live, this is where we explore having human experiences outside of us, difficult experiences around us, difficult things happening to us, and difficult experiences inside of us. We explore how to have those experiences, not put them in charge of our lives, not get caught up in trying to control and fix them all of the time, but instead be proactively building and growing the things we want to see in life while having those experiences come along with us. And so that's what I'd say mental fitness skills are all about, just like physical fitness skills. It's what psychological flexibility is about, just like physical flexibility, that capacity to have a full range of motion, not just with a body part, but in life, with emotions. Taj, hi. You said, I find myself in the context of 2 years of recovery. However, a recent sickness of a loved one has me in an emotional setback, experiencing things I haven't felt since I was in full-on OCD. I don't think I relapsed on compulsions, as I'm making sure to not ruminate, avoid, or check on things. I'm still following my routine. I don't feel like I have changed any behaviors that led me to, but the brain and nervous system is being loud like it was back when I was not recovered. Any advice on this part of my path? So I'd be curious when you're asking like any advice, because is there something you mentioned there that you see as a barrier to something? Because so maybe I'll talk a bit about what's going on. It's very normal and to be expected that when there are changes happening around us, the brain will react to that by throwing up intrusive thoughts. In some ways, it really helped me to even just see my brain as this kind of uncertainty barometer. Like if there's something uncertain happening, like an illness affecting ourselves or a loved one, so we don't control it, it's to be expected that the brain is gonna react by throwing up things that you have experience controlling. So like when you said, oh, it like reminds me of when I was struggling, of like the way things used to be. Because at the time you probably tried to do a lot to fix and control the stuff the brain would throw up. So when there's something happening that you can't control, expect the brain to react in this kind of way that's almost like that's the immune system response to, in this case, something that's not physical. Just like, there's this thing we don't control, attack it. And you're gonna see it attack it with intrusive thoughts. So that's one thing to keep in mind. But then the thing I would ask is because what you described there, you didn't mention anything that you say want to be doing but aren't doing. So these are, you could say annoying, frustrating experiences, but to be expected. Like if we think of the brain just as an organ, like if we think of the brain as an immune system organ, Here is something that has gotten into the system, and the brain is attacking it, like in the sense it's swelling, or it's forming scar tissue. It's attacking something that says does not belong. Are you seeing that as a problem you want to get rid of? Because if so, then this is a great opportunity to welcome the fact that the brain does that. Because yeah, if you get caught up in like, oh, it shouldn't be doing that, and I want to fix that, that can be the easy way back into compulsions. Tona, saludos. I hope you're doing well this weekend. Ugbad, he said, I'm doing fine. I don't know how to stop my daydreaming. Part of me hates, another part of me loves. It's just wasting time, and I'm not doing what I love with this. I'm choosing to do it. Yeah, it's useful you recognize that. If you want to change it, you can. Gary, so can you talk a little why identifying the core fear is so important to recovery? I would watch out for getting too caught up on the idea of like, oh, I've got to find this special core fear and it's this important key to recovery. So because that's become a very common compulsion now. Say that sometimes people will read some certain articles on the internet and then it becomes just like this contamination. Oh, I've got to find this bad thing, as though there's like a contaminated ingredient in their food, and then they're like, I've got to find it, I've got to find it, I know it's here, and that just leads to this constant searching. So watch out for that. It is useful to look at those underlying fears, I find, because we're well, so let's position it in me. So I was doing all sorts of things I saw as normal that were teaching my brain to be afraid of that kind of big underlying core root fear. Seeing what the fear was allowed me then to say, oh, okay, how am I teaching the brain that this is a thing we've got to avoid? Because then the brain is just doing its job then, as an organ, which is saying, oh, okay, this guy, me, says we should prevent, for instance, being alone. So then the brain goes, oh, okay, I'm going to think of all of the things that could lead to other people hating us, excuse me, and us being alone. Just a second. I just ate dinner, and some of it is still in my throat, apparently. Tell what it is, like little bits of peanut. There was like an amazing like spicy peanut sauce on. I had a salad with my lentil soup. It was so good, but apparently I can feel it. So back to this. So the brain is just trying to help us. So if I'm doing all sorts of things that I see as normal to control what other people think, because I think, oh, I've got to make sure people like me, because if they don't like me, then I'm going to be hated, I'm going to be alone. So if I'm doing that in all sorts of simple ways, then the brain goes, oh, okay, we've got to prevent being alone, and then the brain starts throwing up intrusive thoughts about really terrible things that people would hate us for. So that's why we look at the core fear, because then we get to say, oh, how am I teaching it this? Then we see, for instance, then I would see things like, oh, like I was rereading emails over and over and over again because I thought I had to get them right because people will judge me if I make some mistake, say something offensive in an email, etc. But I saw that as normal. But when I look at the core fear and I see, oh, okay, how am I training the brain to be afraid of this? Then I start to look at all of those normal things I was constantly doing to teach the brain that it's very, very bad if people dislike us. And so then we get to make changes around those. And so then we stop teaching the brain to be afraid of that. Then we show it that we can handle that, and then it gets to stop trying to protect us from it. Heil said, I'm really somewhere up around the recovery cliff. However, my brain wants to be super active and helpful. And I'm working 16, 17 hours a day. At the end of the day, scrolling and beer are my only rest. But this is one of the areas, and probably the most common way, we see how the systems around us can really put a lot of pressure on us, put us in situations where it's very difficult not to end up doing compulsions, where we don't have access to a lot of control over our time. And so, like procrastinating or beer, or whatever, it can just seem like the only way to get some control. So part of it is having a lot of understanding for that. Being able to say, oh, okay, like right now I'm in this context where, yeah, I'm working 16, 17 hours a day. Okay, so you're probably gonna like cut yourself some slack to be like, ah, okay, like I'm going to be stressed and I'm going to have limited control. I'm probably gonna do a bunch of things I'd rather not be doing. All right, I see where that's coming from. And then if there's any space, it's useful to also look at, are there supports that you would enjoy more? That sometimes takes some work though. Like that's something I'll often work on before going away on a really busy work trip, for instance. And what that'll look like is actually before the really busy period, lining up supports for those times when I finally have a break, or the day after the busy work period ends. So it's like having food in place that I know will nourish myself, having some other activity there that is already booked in that I can go and enjoy. If you don't want to be scrolling on your phone, is there something else you could do that even is slightly different, like lining up a movie, for instance, that you're going to watch when you get home. So it's still, yeah, you might still be staying up for a bit, but you get to put some separation between you and the phone and say like, okay, I know I'm going to be up anyway. I'd rather be up watching this film than scrolling on my phone. So something like that, like I find it's not so much about what the other thing is, but simply that we choose it instead of the brain just doing its usual spinning, scrolling stuff. So yeah, both giving a lot of compassion for when you're working really hard and there's just not a lot of control over your time, and then also, are there any supports that you could put in place that you would enjoy just a little more, but also would give you the chance to make the choice instead of the brain pushing you to the default. Yeah. So take care of yourself right now while it's really busy. Yeah. Derek Eubanks said, it's been almost 2 years since I've joined Brain Tech Support Live. It's great to be back. I've had a few donuts since then. Oh, Derek, congratulations on those donuts. Thanks for joining us tonight. David said, as a frequent traveler, have you any tips for recovering from quite severe jet lag, making me feel quite fragile, but not staying in bed moping about and getting out to explore? So I have not any particular strategy maybe that you haven't heard before for jet lag. And even right there was, I think it was earlier this year, maybe around the winter time. It would have been around probably winter time, maybe January last year. I missed a Brain Tech Support Live because I took a nap. I was like, well, I'll take a nap. And there was plenty of time. It was probably 4 or 5 hours before Brain Tech Support Live. And so I took a nap. And I slept right through it. Because once that jet lag kicks in, it's incredible. Like I could sleep through anything. If my brain decides, whoa, I don't know what's going on here, you should be asleep. I set multiple alarms for that Brain Tech Support Live. With plenty of time to get up. I was probably gonna go have a meal and then like do it, and I just went right through them all. So I try to do as much as possible not to have the opportunity to take naps when I'm doing so. And this is also, I assume, like this is when there's a 12-hour difference, like on the opposite side of the world to where you are. If it's only a couple hours, then also it's like really, to be realistic, it's it's much easier. And so plan things in so that you are awake, and you're only by the bed at the time that you actually want to go to bed and retrain yourself. In winter, said, I'm reading You're Not a Rock, and I feel like I shouldn't start making changes, in life until I've completely read the book, do all the exercises in it, or else I might fail doing changes in life. So I don't think that'll be possible, because the very first exercise in the introduction is to make a change in your life. And the book, it says to do the exercises. All the exercises are life changes. You won't be able to separate those. Yeah. Enjoy. Oh no, you said all brains have this intense immune system, or only people who end up with an OCD diagnosis? I would say all brains do. In winter, it said, I'm curious whether people who have built better mental health fantasize about different things, like maybe having a girlfriend or things like that. Is that a harmful thing for our mental health? So I'd watch out for getting caught up in is this I thought about a thing, it is harmful for my mental health. Instead, I find it more useful to just look at, there's natural consequences. And so picking a goal, so it could be, something about a romantic partner. It could be like what I was mentioning earlier about, I don't want to be alone, or I'm afraid of being hated. And so, I want people to like me. The goal you pick is going to get the brain to try to protect it. Because we're basically saying, hey, if I want this thing, I will suffer if I don't have it. And the brain is this incredible suffering machine. It both is constantly craving relief from suffering and coming up with plans to prevent and control suffering, which then create more suffering for us, which then makes us crave relief from suffering. And then we come up with more plans to get rid of that suffering, which creates more suffering, and so on. So big suffering machine up here. But that machine depends on the goals we set. Right? If somebody sets a goal of, I want to feel real, what's the brain going to do? Constantly check, do we feel real? Is that right? Are we real right now? Is this real? It's just doing its job to help you chase that goal. So I will say, rather than looking at, it's unhealthy or healthy to have, to think a particular thought or something like that. Instead, I'd say it's really useful to just look at what are the goals you're chasing. Because the brain is going to try to protect and control anything that could get in the way of that goal. So if you pick a goal that you don't control, it's going to create a lot of suffering for you, as the brain tries to control all sorts of things that you don't control. And that creates a lot of anxiety. Disha said, how do you handle panic attacks in a social situation? I had one at a party this weekend, and I sat through the anxious state for about an hour, but eventually I had to leave early because it was too much. I can handle it well alone by talking to myself internally using the DARE method, but not sure what I can do around people. Yeah, Disha, fine. With a panic attack, in general, whatever somebody wants to do after the panic attack has started, whatever you're going to find helpful to get back to a comfortable state where you can do the things you want to do, great. I find it much more useful to look at how do we prevent a panic attack, because a panic attack is a bunch of compulsions and a bunch of checking and wanting to control things we don't control. And then because we're checking these things we don't control and we're starting to find problems like, I don't feel right here, my heart's racing. Oh no, if my heart's racing, is there something wrong? Oh, this doesn't feel right. Oh no, now my heart's racing more, and now, I don't think I'm breathing right. And we create a panic attack. it's much more useful to look at cutting out all those checking and controlling compulsions. So we don't have to look at, oh, how do I handle this once it happens? So, but yeah, if it's happening, then yeah, whatever you would find useful with kindness to yourself. Just like, say, like if you had a kid with you and they were starting to have, like really not enjoying the experience at the party, yeah, how would you support them? How would you help them? Not going to be about like shouting at them and telling them to like stop having problems, because that famously doesn't work on kids. Mhm. So treating the brain, treating ourselves like a kid. Kyle, to Uglad's question about dreams says, I love to daydream too. The meaning of my name is dream. It's so boring not to daydream. But when it turns into day nightmare, that won't stop. And it does, you shouldn't have done it. Thanks for sharing that, Kyle. Erica, yeah, thank you. Yeah, that soup and salad dinner, it was delicious. The lentil soup was very vegetable-y. So it wasn't. I like like I tend to like just just lentils, like lentils, spices, maybe some coconut milk. That's it. This was still good, but it was like if you saw it, you would have been like, oh, I think that's a vegetable soup. But it was like vegetable soup with soupy lentils. Colin, thanks for joining us. So, can you share a few thoughts on navigating through unrequited love? I want to learn how to move on. Oh, so that's beautiful. You shared love. And so much of I find navigating mental health is often learning skills around loss, like in being able to touch loss and being able to give something. I'd say working on our mental health enables us to feel and to give and not need to protect that, not need to be like, oh, I can't risk sharing love because what if it's unrequited, which ends up meaning we really constrict ourselves. And so it's wonderful when we can share love. Actually, yeah, maybe it's not requited, or it's not met in the same way that we share it. And that is, yeah, wonderful. Like we can celebrate that we gave that. We're not trying to get something. So again, it comes back to that idea of giving instead of getting. Moving on from it doesn't mean we have to make it not feel painful. We don't have to go, oh, I don't care about that. I'm moving on. Like that's not what it's like. We can remember that at any moment and be like, oh, that, yeah, like I really, oh, I wish that had worked out differently. Or I gave so much and I was really hurt. And we can touch that and both celebrate that we gave and also notice the pain. And yeah, celebrate that as part of life. Boasting Gamer said, is it okay to label or judge positive feelings as good and think about it? I look at it like, why do you want to check on that? Dilwich said, the brain can be your worst enemy. It's just a squishy organ. And it's just following the goals that we set, right? Like if we set the goal, it's going to try to protect us. We may not like how it tries to protect that goal, but it is just trying to do its job. Marush said, do people experience their intrusive thoughts as louder than other thoughts? For me, I have a fear of schizophrenia. My thoughts come in as a yell, trying to get my attention and scare me. Yeah, so Marush, it's great you actually connected the fear of schizophrenia there, because that's how I was going to respond to your first question. Because the first part of the question, right, do people experience their intrusive thoughts as whatever, is just a classic reassurance compulsion, because implicit in that is like, oh no, if people don't experience this, then there must be something especially wrong with my mind. So it can be really useful to start to look at those checking and judging compulsions and comparing, like if you're sitting there going, ooh, that was loud and that's different from other types of thoughts, what does that mean? That's all of the compulsion stuff. And the more you do it, the more you're going to see the kind of the gap in comparison grow, because then the brain knows like, oh, okay, if we could just keep ramping up the odd things going on here, then that's going to get you to do more and more compulsions around the fear. And right, again, here you see that what I was talking about with a goal. So if your goal is like, I don't want to have schizophrenia, then the brain has to go, okay, I'm going to check everything so we can make sure we don't have schizophrenia. And what that's going to do is you're just going to become more and more and more convinced that you're having a psychotic episode. So it's really useful to change the goal and cut out the compulsions. Erica, so do you have any advice for me if I want to learn how to enjoy being alone? It's currently a pretty uncomfortable experience for me, but I feel like it doesn't have to be unpleasant. Yeah, have you ever, so yeah, it does not have to be unpleasant. I'd be curious about a couple things, like with the experience. So one, it can be fun to, yeah, go spend some time alone and look at like, why is it uncomfortable? Like what is the uncomfortableness? And what is there, where does it come from? Because sometimes too, we'll see that very early on, when we were like small people running around, we're just running around the streets as little children, we had experiences that are kind of like if we, accidentally touch some scissors and cut ourselves, or touch the hot stove. And we just went, whoa, that's painful, never do that again. And it just kind of gets, seared into the brain. So sometimes looking underneath, like, oh, why don't we like being alone? Sometimes we see they're like, like it's like there's this cabinet of rules in the brain, but a lot of them were written by like a little kid in crayon. And so we go to the cabinet of rules and we open it up, and we think that we're going to see some official document in there with lots of evidence and science. And instead there's just like a little kid's crayon scrawlings that says, don't be alone. And that's it. So it can be useful to see, yeah, is that part of where it comes from? Like, is there a little Erica somewhere inside who's just like, don't do this because this hurt. Don't let it happen again. So sometimes there's a bit of that that's useful to explore there. And then, yeah, other times, what I like to look at there is how I am to myself. Because if I'm spending time alone, it is still like there is another person there, right? That colleague sitting across the desk. And so it really matters how I'm talking to myself about myself, how I give attention to this other person who is me. Because am I giving them attention like a friend? Like, ooh, I'm really interested in what's going on, and like I want to know about their life, and I'm excited for whatever they're doing? Or am I approaching them with kind of, oh, I'm not interested in them. I don't want to spend time alone with them. I don't want to know what they're doing. They should be doing something else. How do you talk to yourself about yourself when you spend time alone? And then, yeah, some of it too is just exploring like how do we kind of like take ourselves on dates? How do we really charm ourselves when we're enjoying time just with ourselves? I think also, like I was thinking about this just now in the restaurant, because I really like the plants across from my table. There is an element too of shifting outwards, because yeah, there just is so much in the world in any moment, that yeah, sometimes too, that time spent alone, maybe we don't have to be spending all of that time talking to or being with ourselves in our heads. And then we start to realize that we're not alone, that we're like always in really complex, really big systems, and that being alone is pretty impossible. And so that's something that we can also tap into in any moment. Yeah, but enjoy. I think it'll really be, especially with all the great skills you have, really going on an exploration and adventure around it. I'm curious to hear what you discover. Disha, he said, is mental fitness about just always being this proactive? I wouldn't say it's not just always being this proactive, but I would say it is the shift. Like it's why we look at something like mental fitness versus like mental illness or mental health even. Yeah, fitness is proactive. Like we can't expect to have a skill that we haven't built. So I'd say, yeah, it's a core, the proactiveness of it is a core concept, a core principle. Elvad, hi. So in your opinion, do you think there are mental health benefits to traveling? Not inherently so, because I belong to all sorts of, travel, and digital nomad communities and things like that now, and mental health communities. And so many people post to the most common topic probably on most travel forums is I am traveling and I'm lonely and I regret it. Some complaint of people's mental health not going well is one of the most common topics by far, significantly. That doesn't mean, there's lots of other people, right? Of course, because people are posting because they're in distress, it's going to seem like that is a much larger percentage of travelers than it is. Whereas, travelers who are just enjoying it are probably not spending their trip posting on, Reddit or something like that. So there's that. But I always tell people that no matter how far you travel, your brain is always in the same place. And so don't expect travel to do mental health and fitness work and to do the changes for you. Absolutely, a trip can be an opportunity to facilitate changes that we're already working on. We say, look, I'm already working on learning how to handle experiences differently. And as I go on this trip, I'm going to apply those skills. And that absolutely can be something you can do. And in fact, I would say it's kind of key. If we're going on a trip, we definitely want to apply our skills and bring them with us because there's going to be an increase in uncertainty. And so there is one of the reasons why I'd say that, travel doesn't inherently help people's mental health because it is an increase in uncertainty, almost certainly. And if a person isn't building skills to handle uncertainty differently, then they're likely to default to the old ways of coping and checking and controlling, which means that things will probably get worse. So that's what I'd be looking out for. Side Manson, welcome. Bicep curls to you. Good morning. Bikram said, do you think stress increases OCD? I'm working in the IT sector and I'm practicing ACT on my own. But with anxiety, it's difficult to work. What should I do? So Bikram, I'd say yes and no. You might have missed it earlier. I was talking about how if there's increased uncertainty and change around us, like work stress or there's a lot of pressure, then it is very natural that the brain is going to throw up more intrusive thoughts, for instance. Or if you're in a really stressful work situation, you may feel a lot of pressure to do more compulsions. Because you're losing control in the work context, the brain is then searching for control. So it's applying that pressure to just check a thing or repeat a thing again and again and again and again, just to get a sense of control. But getting over OCD, cutting out the compulsions, involves us not giving into that pressure. So recognizing that, oh, okay, of course this pressure is going up right now because I'm really stressed about work. Like stress is just blowing up off the rails. So of course I'm looking for control right now. But I see that brain and I'm not going to give into that because then I'm just reacting to one bad situation by making another bad situation worse. So the reason I raised that is because in your question there, you asked, like, does stress make OCD, does stress increase OCD? So I'd say no, stress will increase things like intrusive thoughts, will increase a physical reaction, but OCD depends on us doing the compulsions. OCD is not thoughts. The brain can do whatever it wants. OCD is only there if we react to that stuff. So when you're entering a stressful time at work or a really busy time, it's important to have a plan in place for not getting caught up in that pressure to do compulsions. So really looking at what are those compulsions you're going to cut out? How are you going to put supports in place? Because you know there's going to be so much extra pressure. But it's totally doable, and then it's really helpful because actually the compulsions stress us out even more, take up more time and energy, and we need that time and energy to handle the intensive stuff at work. So yeah, it's way, way more helpful to us to not be doing the compulsions. Disha, you asked to explain more about what you said about preventing a panic attack and how to go about it. Not sure I quite understand. Yeah, so Disha, so one of the things you could just be curious about around panic attacks is what is a panic attack? So how does it start? At first, it may seem like that stuff all happens automatically, but a panic attack relies on us, right, checking how we're feeling, not wanting to feel a certain thing, having physical sensations and stuff start to get out of control, us going, these shouldn't be here, like I need to do something to fix something, I can't be around people right now. There's a whole bunch of stuff that happens around those physical sensations that makes them spiral out of control. So yeah, right now, it could simply be useful to be curious about what is a panic attack and what happens long before a panic attack. For instance, if somebody's going to a social event and they go, oh, okay, I hope I feel good tonight. I hope nothing wrecks this experience. I hope I don't get anxious or have a panic attack, right? So if that's the goal right from earlier in the day, maybe even they avoided a bunch of things because they're like, ooh, I don't want to do this important work thing before the party because that thing will make me anxious. So they've kind of been shrinking and controlling life already. So that puts the brain in this mode where it's like, oh, there's this thing coming up and I've got to avoid and control things or it'll get wrecked. So then the brain is in avoid and control mode, which means it's going to find more things to avoid and control, which is going to spiral up into a panic attack, pretty likely. So yeah, really being curious around what happens before a panic attack. Elvad said, I've been thinking more about this, but do you believe that people who are mentally fit are less likely to be manipulated by people who want to exploit or control others? I'm not sure. But even if I give you a yes or a no answer, I don't know what you could do with that. Like that sounds like a thing you could just explore through life. There could always be situations where somebody is more easily manipulated by something. There can also be situations where, yeah, values are really helpful to notice, somebody trying to pull or control you, and then you setting boundaries, or say, oh, okay, like I understand how you're trying to push me around right now, but this is the thing I really want to do. Because it is the same skill we need to practice with our brains. Boasting gamer, he said, how to give ourselves kindness when facing anxiety or detachment. So there, I ask you, what does kindness look like to you? Like, what are the actions of kindness? Ugbed, yeah, he said, how to stop making a lot of excuses. I always say, now I can't concentrate. I will do it later, but I'm always delaying. So that's where you look at whatever that thing is you're judging as a contamination. Like, ooh, I can't concentrate now because this sound is here, this image is here, this thought is here, this feeling is here, etc. Like that's the same as somebody saying, "Ah, my hands feel contaminated. I can't do this until they feel clean." So that pattern of saying, "Oh, I've got to fix a thing before I live my life," oh, so much struggle is based on that pattern. And then so it's just fun to start to break it, just like we would. Somebody had a classic hand washing compulsion. Say, okay, yeah, feel contaminated, and we're gonna go do the important thing now. And so bring the whatever that feeling is, where you're like, oh, I can't concentrate, just bring it along with you. Elizabeth, he said, so thinking positive thoughts and daydreaming, is that a compulsion? I find it hard to see when it's a compulsion and when it's not. I used to daydream a lot, but since I got stressed and OCD, I do not. So yeah, I wouldn't get caught up in like, oh, this is a compulsion or that's not a compulsion. Instead, I find it most useful to look at how do I want to spend my time and energy in life. So if I want to sit down and daydream, I can do that. If I want to not daydream, but give that time and energy to something else that is more important to me, that's growing things I want to see in the world, then I'd rather do that. Utsav, he said, any tips on staying focused on your task at hand? Is to practice doing the task at hand throughout life. And by that, I mean like doing the thing you're doing. So often, we are doing many, many, many different things. Like even, walking down the street, having a conversation with somebody who's not even there. Not just like, flipping through multiple tabs on our phone or something, but doing that well, talking to somebody well, working on something else. We're so often multitasking in ways that aren't necessary and that do not improve any kind of productivity or impact or anything like that. We've become just very socially accepting of being really terrible at doing multiple things at once around other people. It can be very fun and very enjoyable, personally, to practice doing just one thing often throughout life. Because if you only try to focus on the task at hand when the task at hand is like something important. So if you're like, oh, I'm gonna do some important work now, gotta focus on the task at hand. But for all of the hours before that, you were teaching the brain to not focus on the task at hand. You're like eating breakfast on your phone, having a conversation with your partner, and you were commuting to work and having arguments with your boss while also still like playing games on your phone. All sorts of different ways that we end up multitasking and things like that. Even like, yeah, you're sitting on the toilet, but you're on your phone, but you're also like planning a trip in your head, etc. If you're constantly doing other things, then of course it's just impossible to focus on the task at hand because we've spent so much time teaching the brain not to do that, and we've rewarded it for that. So starting to do the task at hand throughout life is super enjoyable. That's one of the things I really like about a meditation retreat. So I was just at a 7-day silent Chan meditation retreat in Taiwan. One of the practices or principles that I like so much about Chan or Zen is that everything is the practice. And so yeah, you'll have your meditation time where you're sitting on the cushion or kneeling on the cushion. But then when we're doing something like work practice, where like we're just sweeping a staircase or something like that, the aim is to bring the same quality of resting singular awareness that we had on the cushion to navigating and sweeping the staircase. So like if I'm sitting, then I'm sitting. If I'm sweeping, then I'm sweeping. Same with eating. When we're eating, still silent, only eating. Exploring how to do that helps vastly, massively increase focus throughout life when we really need it. Luna the Grey said, I walked away from spiritual teacher of 6 years and brain is throwing up many worries about now making progress on the path. Can you share tips on not putting pressure on progress, walking the Buddhist path? So, because my experience with Buddhism is in Zen, and so I don't know if that is the same kind of path you've been navigating there. But I think in Zen, there's a lot baked in to the kind of centuries of writing already around the idea that there is no path, there is nothing to attain. So there is a lot there around those concepts that could be useful to explore if you're putting pressure on yourself to be striving for something or attaining something or seeing that there's this path. And personally, I find it useful to see there is nowhere to go. There is just right now. And so right now, within the context in which we find ourselves here, in this moment, we can make the choices that we want to make. We can be present and we can take a step, just one step, with curiosity and compassion. And that's all. And there's nothing else that we have to get. Sideman said, should Stoicism be an avenue to explore when dealing with mental health, or course with caution, but something to look at no less? I wouldn't. It sounds like you have, like when you mentioned kind of approaching it with caution, or like should it be an avenue to explore? I guess I see Stoicism. I'm really big into a practice. So an intellectual understanding of a philosophy is great. They make great sound bites. You can share them on social media. Very popular. But when you're looking at what you're turning into practice, I think whatever you take from any school of philosophy that you find useful to apply in real action and real changes in your life can be great. But if you notice like you're putting kind of a lot of heavy meanings or importance or scary attachments to a concept, then it could be useful to look at, what's actually in the meanings that you're attaching there. And kind of like take off some of those and just look at, what is it you want to be doing in life? What do you want to be growing? What skills do you want to be building? And what's going to help you build those? And finding what will help you build that will be a process of trying things and seeing what works well, seeing if it takes you like in very real terms in a direction you want to go. And then if it doesn't, picking up new tools and trying those. Oh, Colin, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your questions. Blooper So it's been a while since you caught one. I'm glad you caught this one. I hope you're doing well too. Morush said, any tips on reducing rumination? I find it automatic. As an example, I didn't sleep well last night. The second my eyes open, my mind starts to ruminate. So it really helped me to learn how to do things differently in my head, and especially to stop doing things in my head, to explore meditation. And I would say that was, having just come back from a retreat, one of the biggest benefits of doing something like a meditation retreat, but I would say in general, exploring all of these skills we talk about, is that the brain starts to just sit with you. And a lot of responsibility comes with that, because we're so used to the brain running around, throwing up stuff, and us reacting to it. And then we get a lot of stuff done because the brain's always like, what about this? We should do this. We should control that. What's that person doing? Look over there. And then we're like doing all of that stuff. As you practice meditation and teaching the brain to sit and do nothing, it starts to behave like that. And then the challenge is, then it really is like having this trained dog who's no longer pulling on the leash in every direction, but is looking at you to tell it where to go and what to do. And so that's where things like values come in really handy, but also there's a lot of responsibility with that. And so yeah, I would explore meditation, in particular types of meditation that will teach you how to do it silently. So you start to teach the brain that it doesn't have to do anything. And then we apply that skill from meditation through mindfulness in the real world by just doing one thing. In winter, he said, does that mean if we just start doing what we wanted to do in life, do the things to achieve our goals, we would just cut out the compulsions and like maybe do the things we want to do? Is it that simple like that? I know it's hard, but I thought like we need to do a lot of the things before, like reading You Are Not a Rock, we start living our life. The first part, so the only adjustment I would make, and the first part you said we would just cut out the compulsions. I'd say no, like you'll still need to like kind of actively cut them out, because they're like any habit then, right? Like they just become reflexes. So they won't magically disappear. But otherwise, it's like because right now, I am not hitting myself in the face with a frying pan. I am actually in the kitchen because there's not very good lighting in my place, so I have the stove light on to like give me extra light. So the frying pan's right over there. I'm not hitting myself in the face with a frying pan. I'm also not like actively having to go, oh, I'm cutting out frying pan hitting. I'm choosing to do this. Like this is, sharing mental health tools, connecting with you amazing people, building and supporting and collaborating on a community of people around the world, learning how to handle their brains. That's a thing I'd like to give my time and energy to. So there's tons of things I'm not giving my time and energy to. And we can approach the compulsions like that extensively. Like they are just things we don't give time and energy to anymore. But because we'll have organized our life around the compulsions, there's often some pretty significant changes that need to be made to stop giving them time and energy and instead give it to other things. Utsev, he said, do you think excessive drinking and smoking are also compulsions? They're pretty, if they're not compulsions, then the person could just cut them out. Though, said, I find myself being very sensitive to environment, neighbor sounds last few months, to a point that it seems to physically hurt and connects to panic. Any tips? So it's really common, so it's called misophonia, so I struggled with it too. And there were very specific sounds would cause me physical experiences, like even like kind of like pain, but also like weird full body nervous system experiences. Like whatever gets crossed in the brain around this stuff is fascinating. I found it useful to approach it like learning how to accept any unwanted experience. So whether it's an intrusive thought, an image, a voice, a sound, a physical sensation, etc. It's about wanting to have that while doing things that we care about. So there's a bunch of exercises you can do. It depends on what you really value and what you want to be doing. So for instance, I had all sorts of compulsions around sounds while I was writing and creating stuff. So one of the types of exercises I did was to go and write important things in noisy places. And then there's this added piece of exploring how we want it, because there's that automatic reaction like, ooh, I heard that sound, oh, it's so frustrating, I wish it wasn't here. Like if we're still engaged with this goal around getting rid of the noise and the noise shouldn't be there, then the issue continues. Actually going to work around it is just going to become more and more stressful. You've also got to explore changing those goals around the sound. So can you want to be good at, say working in a noisy place, as an example. So it's approaching it more like physical fitness and weights. Like if somebody just goes to the gym and they're like, oh, I hate the weights, why are they so heavy, I wish they weren't here. They're probably not going to make very much progress on their physical fitness journey, but they are not feeling the weights in any different way than the person who likes going to the gym and goes, oh, that was such a good workout, I can't use my arms anymore. They had the exact same physical experience. Those were heavy things, they were really challenging to lift, and they experienced physical sensations that are uncomfortable, but they wanted to do it. So can you want to get good at handling any sound? SNS said, how to know if I am really are in love. I know a person with a personality far different from what I wanted, but I know I love this person. But I think I love this person, but I don't know for sure. I won't have any certain answer for you. It's something we explore. Sandy said, my obsessions is naked thought about people that I have trauma with. Then if I'm doing work that's important, my work, or feeling contaminated, then I do compulsions and replay tasks for hours. Yeah, Sandy, it's a common experience, like and set of compulsions. Yeah, it'll be really useful to explore doing different things when having unwanted experiences. But like you mentioned, there's also trauma there. It's really natural that we're going to try to do something around traumatic and painful experiences. So yeah, if you can work with a skilled professional or grab a good book to start learning about mental health skills, that could be a useful place to start changing how you interact with them. Bogus Binted, you stopped by to say hello. It's good to see you. Hello. Thanks for wishing everybody well. Shuvadi said, I've been diagnosed with OCD and I'm doing well, but I'm really struggling with memory loss. So what can I do, sir? The only thing I'd watch out for there is because checking memories and then checking online because you believe you're not remembering things is a very common OCD compulsion. So yeah, I would just be really curious about how you're splitting those right now, because you're like, oh, I'm doing well with OCD, but I'm struggling with memory loss. Because to me, that sounds like you're doing a bunch of OCD compulsions around memory. Luna the Gray said, I'm about to take a 24-hour flight to get married. I never thought I could do this, but with valued action, I have. I'm looking forward to the time watching nothing on the flight. Enjoy not just the flight, a 24-hour flight. That's epic. I assume there must be a connection in there. So I hope the connections go well, and I hope the getting married goes well. Enjoy that. Congratulations. Yeah, Sandy, you mentioned here, like often I'll believe that thought are not bad, but if I thinking it is bad, my compulsions, for example, are I have, a plan to open my PC. Then if I'm triggered by a bad thought, I will wait until I have no bad thought for hours. Yeah, so it's a common compulsion, but you can see how it really impacts life. Like the making the changes are going to be about, if you have a plan to open your PC and there's a thought, welcoming the thought to sit down and opening the PC. Gary, yeah, he said, do you think mantras can be useful? For example, saying be here now as a reminder to stay present. I'm assuming that could also very easily become a compulsion. Yeah, a mantra can be useful. So I'd say if somebody is just beginning, somebody's just learning skills, they're coming from a place of like just being really, really distracted or needing to do extra things. So we give an extra thing to do that at least is a little more positioned where we'd like the brain to be. But always, I would see the goal is to recognize that you're here now because that's a fact, not because it's a thing you say. So really starting to recognize it as a fact, as an aspect of reality, like gravity, not, and so just probably because a lot of you with gravity don't have to tell yourself each day, things fall. Right? You just expect them to fall. And the same with being present, starting to make it just an aspect of reality will be or whatever the mantra might be around. Same with things like loving kindness and stuff like that. If somebody's been doing loving kindness meditation, and often there's like a phrase you say, try it a couple times, dropping the phrase. Give the love to yourself or to others while saying nothing. So how do you do that? What is it? What is the action? What is the expression of love beyond words? Very useful to explore. 11 Tree Lover 11. With OCD, I feel like my brain recycles through the same fears all day. Yeah. Like I feel okay just engaging, doing things with a fear in the background, and then another one comes in and is just as real. Yes. What you're noticing there is very consistent. I like to call these the brain's characters. And so, yeah, you'll see the brain cycle through these like similar patterns over and over again. So it's useful once you understand those to be able to know, hey, the brain, I know brain, you're just gonna throw up a thing around this fear. And then, oh, you're gonna go do this fear. Oh, and then you're gonna go do this fear. So then you can start to put some distance between you and them. Bagel, 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 good morning. Mike Mess, thank you for the donation and the happy face. I appreciate it. Thank you for dropping by and donating. Northwest. He said, I've always moved forward in life, accomplishing the things I wanted to do, in spite of chronic, relentless anxiety in the background. What behavior do I need to change to stop the chronic doom? I don't know enough about the behaviors that you are doing to tell you what behavior I'd look at changing. A question that I'd start with, if somebody told me like, what do I need to stop the chronic doom? I'd be really curious about like what is the feared consequence that would come to pass? Like what are you trying to control? What are you anxious about preventing? I'd look there first. Mike, shared a comment here too. He said, thanks for your help. I've recovered from OCD. I no longer believe in intrusive thoughts or feelings, so there's nothing to obsess over. I also stopped believing in right or wrong answers as well. Like, that's great. Enjoy having thoughts and sometimes not having thoughts. Bagel, bagel, bagel would just like everybody to know that we share 96% of our DNA with corn. Corn, it's delicious. Yodi said, how am I? I'm well. Mike, he also said, what I am finding challenging is ancillary problems to OCD recovery. I've changed, but the people around me expect me to engage in old ways, engage in negative shared experiences. Yeah. So, Mike, this is something, I don't know if I think you mentioned before, you have a copy of my book, maybe? Because this is something I talked about in You Are Not a Rock and the Mind Workout. When we change, one of the challenges is, as you're noticing, because everybody does not like uncertainty and change. And so when you change, you notice how the systems around you were built around your old habits, and also that other people will prefer you to stay in those old habits because that keeps things certain for them. So it's important to understand that when we make a personal change that's really healthy for us, we do have to bring everybody else along with us. And considering, so like really thinking about, okay, now that you've seen some of that pushback, okay, how are you going to proactively help bring other people in this direction that's better for you? And so there's going to be some communication, there's going to be some boundary setting, there's going to be articulating that some things have changed, but doing that with compassion, understanding that, you know, everybody, and so everybody who will consider themselves to have no mental health issues will react to change by trying to put it back the way it was, because they'll find it threatening. Because they'll be like, ooh, I don't know, I knew what the old way of things meant, but I don't know what this means. So it could be something bad. And so as we take them and change the systems around us, it's important to understand that a person's initial reaction to change will be to assume that it's threatening. But you can show them it's not threatening. Healthy changes are just donuts and teddy bears. Shresha said, can you expand on coping, checking, and correcting? It's probably controlling as the three main compulsions. How to identify them and the two tricks you have mentioned in your book, which I won't be able to. There are entire chapters like the coping, checking, and controlling each get their own chapter plus a second chapter after each one of them that looks at further kind of nuances of the compulsion and applying them. And there's like very detailed examples of the two tricks. So I won't be able to give you more than 7 chapters of a book in a short answer. I'm sorry, but yeah, maybe if you have a specific reason you're asking about that, because I'd also look at like any kind of explanation of that would be kind of general. It'd be just difficult to apply if you wanted all of that compressed into an answer. So I'd look at, what is it that you're trying to do, that you're struggling to do? And then maybe we can look at some kind of example very directly related to that. Bagel, bagel, bagel. True to brand, he said, I'm going to pick up some pastries after this live. It is rainy and cold where I am. Good day for coffee and bed. Oh, that sounds delicious. Bagel, 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 enjoy those. Yeah, a pastry with a coffee. The other day, after the meditation retreat, kind of the first day after, I didn't want to like rush into doing all sorts of work and stuff right away, on like my phone or something. So what I did was I went to a coffee shop and I got a coffee and I got a cinnamon bun that looked amazing. And I sat down and then first on paper, I planned out like what was most important and what I would look at first and what I would respond to first. I was probably there for, I was there probably at least an hour because also I had become so sensitive to coffee, which must have had more to do with the food. We were eating like, basically tofu and rice and boiled vegetables for a week because I've often gone a week without caffeine. That's not a big deal at all. But when I had that first, it was a cold brew coffee after that morning after the medicine, I had only drank a third of it and I was ready to hike to the moon and back. Like yeah, definitely eating like temple food for a week. I can see why things like intoxicants are cut out of the Buddhist diet. Because yeah, if you've been eating like really just like minimal vegan food for a week, caffeine is pure rocket fuel. Oh, bagel, 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 you're going to see the Nutcracker later. And but yeah, it is cannibalism. Yeah, if we're just eating corn, I did think about that too. Marush said, last question for you, Mark. Oh, this is the last question. I will touch this experience of the end. I said, does meditation help with mental clarity? I find myself feeling confused when OCD is 10 out of 10. Hard to understand what I'm reading or conversing with people about. So I would not approach meditation with that goal of getting clarity when OCD is 10 out of 10. Because that checking for like, oh, I want things to feel right, I should feel clear right now, that is a really common example of the compulsion, the typical compulsion pattern. Just like if we said like, oh, I don't feel clean right now, I don't feel perfectly clean. Like we try to clean clarity of the mind in the same way we try to clean our hands. It's same mechanism behind derealization, depersonalization, etc. So I'd look instead at, and this is something that I would say meditation can be helpful for, is how are you getting to the 10 out of 10? Right? What's getting all of those compulsions started? What are you checking and controlling? And what's building that? And where meditation, I find really practically can be very useful with OCD, is that when we sit down to meditate, what we're doing is having a intentional period of stopping during which we have experiences, which could be physical, it could be our leg going like, move my foot. It could be a sound we hear around us. It could be an image. Right? With the example of, an image of somebody we've had a traumatic experience with. It could be something that seems appealing, like planning what we're going to eat after a meditation retreat, something like that. And we have those experiences and we don't engage with them. We don't react to them. We don't judge them. We let them be there. So the thoughts, the feelings, the physical sensations, the sounds, all on the same level. And what that'll do as you practice that is we start to put more and more space between us and experiences and automatic reactions. So we're starting to teach the brain to unwind those reflexes. That gives us the chance then to see it. Like, oh, I see that uncertainty right now, and oh, I see this pressure from my brain to go chase after it. And I'm not going to. So a consistent meditation practice can help with that if we apply the skills to the other experiences we're having in everyday life. Mike, he said, I imagine that you would suggest looking at the systems around me and making changes to support great mental health. My problem is that I don't want to let go of some people and things. But I wouldn't necessarily look at like letting go of people and things. Like I always approach it like making changes in systems around us. Like that's not gonna necessarily be like okay, we're cutting out this system, like get rid of it. Like actually looking at, okay, I want to bring this this person or these people along in this change, or because quite often people don't have the luxury of cutting out a system. The systems that they need to change are very entrenched and powerful. That's why then people get engaged in making systemic change, because those systems are oppressive and controlling on their lives. And yeah, it's not going to be possible to cut out the system. We have to engage and change the system. Dominus said, I recently shifted from I do things because of who I am to I am what I do. Currently, I'm sitting calmly, making me calm. Enjoy the sitting. Kyriakos said, in a recent IG post, you talked about incorporating relaxation practices when you're in a period in our lives where we suddenly have less stress. Can you elaborate on that and why? I'm not sure exactly what you're talking about. I'm trying to think. Incorporating relaxation practices when we are in a period in our lives when we suddenly have less stress. I wonder, yeah, can you give an example of what you mean, or like how you're curious about applying it in your life? Eleven Tree Lover said, when I meditate, I end up obsessing about the thinking process. I get existential fears about how the brain works. Like, oh, where did that thought come from? Am I just a brain throwing up things? How do I don't, what's me or my brain? So, 11 Tree Lover, it could be helpful to recognize that as not actually meditating. That is like ruminating. And so, yeah, meditating would be also dropping that stuff. Mike. Oh, I appreciate the second donation too, Mike. Thank you. Yeah, yeah, I thought so. Yeah, you've read the book. Yeah, and I appreciate that too. Thank you. Yeah. Mud, welcome from the dark side. Oh, Mud, nil points today. We can give you a point. Have 5 points. Jagoda, you said, could you say a little bit more about the connection between OCD and the need to constantly change cities, jobs, countries, etc.? Yeah, I describe it as like when somebody's just like constantly like flipping the table. And so even like what I was just talking about there with systems, like it's really important that we change the systems. Whereas what we'll often, our initial reaction will be like, oh, well, just cut it out. Like just get rid of it, just throw it out, just wash it away, like get rid of this feeling. But what I find really fascinating, and so I used to do this, right, when I would like change careers all the time. It's so much extra work. I think a big part of it is that we're so hooked on doing hard work. And so that one of the reasons we'll start to look at, oh, I've got to like change this and like I've got to get out of here is because it's just gonna, like the brain loves it. It's just gonna create, right, so much more uncertainty. Oh, now we've got to find like a new place to live and a new job, and we've got to navigate new systems, and it's just like it's going to take all of this time to learn all of this stuff. So a guiding principle that really helps me is to always, with any idea that comes up, like so one, assume my brain's trying to make me do a lot of extra hard work, and then also to ask, like, how do I let this be easy? Disha said, I can be super anxious at home, heart beating, shaking, and then feel fine for the moment I force myself to go to a cafe to work. I'm sure the physical sensations don't just disappear the moment I step out the door. Is this experience just because my awareness shifts outwards? If so, how do I practice recreate that even at home? So I'd be curious, when you say I'm sure the physical sensations don't just disappear, are you, they might, and they might not. It sounds like, yeah, I don't want to lead you on, because what I would say is that what you're noticing there is really useful stuff to start exploring. Because even looking at, when there are some physical sensations there, like you said, like if I force myself to go out and work at a cafe, why does it feel like forcing yourself to go and do the thing you want to do? And so what is going on in there? There's probably a lot of useful stuff to explore. Bikram said, in short, we all have to do accept every thought with no judgment, with no rules to our brain, and with practicing it becomes easier to move towards our goals, whatever the mind throws. I'm not sure what you're asking there, Bikram. Erica, indeed, tofu, rice, and boiled vegetables is really nice. Thanks for those vegetable and our tofu block emoji look great. Tresha, you said, I've been experiencing uncertainty around my sexual identity with me getting distressed about thoughts, images, sensations, checking, coping, and controlling, or compulsions I engage in. It's great you see all of that stuff going on. It's useful to have the uncertainty and not do all of the damaging compulsions. But again, useful to look at, is there some goal you're chasing there? So you're saying, oh, I must get certainty about this. Then the brain is going to check for all of the things that could be uncertain. And then you're going to find all of those distressing, which is going to make it check even more, which is going to be more distressing. And it'll just keep going. But it starts with that goal. Edward, thanks for joining us. Oh, Edward, everybody. Edward was at the meditation retreat I was just at. Oh, Edward, I appreciate you stopping by. Yeah, thanks for emailing that. I look forward to chatting and learning more about your work. I don't know if you caught it. We were talking a bit about the retreat earlier. But yeah, I hope you're having a good day. Good evening now. The food was good. I've been at retreats that did not have such good food. Eleven Tree Lover. As he said, how do you change the goal when you're so scared? Like, how do you tell yourself, okay, don't check? There are a couple things that help me, but so one is that committing to not checking, knowing that in the moment when we feel that pressure, like it's gonna be 100% feel so necessary to check and so completely rational. So there were always things I would be very convinced that if I didn't check, either I was going to die or other people were going to die. And in those moments, there's no, at least for me, no capacity to say, oh, this is not real, or I see this is just the brain or the mental illness or something like that. It's 100% real. And so when we commit to cutting out that compulsion, it is going to feel like we are causing the worst scenario to happen. So just to set that up, the brain is going to have amazing reasons. There'll be nothing irrational about doing the checking. It helped me to recognize that actually cutting out the compulsions, like doing the healthy actions, is what will feel unreasonable. Like we commit to that unreasonably. And then this is where I find it becomes really interesting to explore what is under this stuff. What are those big fears that I was reacting to? What are the things I'm afraid of losing? And then we get to touch that loss. I was sharing over on Instagram earlier today, but like speaking of the retreat, I don't know, Edward, if you have any tricks for the retreat that you want to share um, when you're meditating. But I know one of the things that I find really useful when meditating, at a retreat, for anything that comes up, is to use the practice of what I call like keeping death close. So throughout during this retreat we were just at, if I noticed just a thought about like, oh, we should make sure we do this after we get back, or some kind of dislike about something in the retreat or something like that, I would just practice recognizing that the last day of the retreat will actually be the last day of my life. That there's nothing after. So with everything, every good novel idea, every good book idea, every criticism, something that would get talked about in the retreat or something like that, every dislike of anything, whether it's like some kind of like meal thing or work practice or something, just recognizing that it was actually the last time I would ever get to do something like that. So one, I'm not going to chase after any ruminating or planning in my head. There's no point to that. Because whatever I'm thinking about, it's not going to happen. So it's like me planning what I'm going to eat at a restaurant that I know is closed. So just seeing the brain go, oh, we could go do this, and then go, oh, okay, but we can't. Like that's not a thing we can do. So I'm not going to think about it. But then also with anything I'd be frustrated with, if we stop and recognize that actually this is the last time I'm ever going to have this experience, then I find it much, I was about to say easier, but actually it can, one, feel kind of scary, because our brains are easily convinced it'll feel real, but it enables getting in touch with what's amazing right here and really simple things. Like even sweeping a staircase. If it's the last time you're going to sweep a staircase, it's a pretty amazing thing. Oh, Edward, I'm glad. Yeah, you made it back from your conference. I hope you conferenced well and had a good journey. Shresha, yeah, you said how to value self-love when you've not done that for long. Yeah, it's really common though that we haven't done it for long. I know for me exploring, so thinking of meditation again, exploring different meditation techniques, like loving kindness meditation, I found it so fascinating how I could hold on to something I was anxious about for weeks. Like really, as soon as I would wake up, just ruminating on the same fear over and over again, then multiple times throughout the day, and just like feeling that drop of panic every time it came up. And I could do that for a week, no problem, hours every day. But then when it came to something like love, like doing a loving kindness meditation, oh, like 30 seconds of feeling love towards something, and I'd be like, this is too much. I can't do it any longer. And how strange that is. Same with things like self-hatred, self-criticism. We've become such athletes at them, like ultra marathon runners at anxiety and self-criticism. Complete couch potatoes when it comes to love. And so the only way to get there is to give it the same amount of practice that we've given to things like self-judgment, self-criticism, anxiety, guilt. We are such power lifters when it comes to things like guilt. But love, yeah, we like take a couple steps and be like, oh, I can't do anymore. And so we just gotta start practicing. Yeah, so things like loving kindness meditation towards yourself, it's something I approach as a, like going for runs or swims or something like that. Like it's something I know I have to keep that system kind of powered up. And if I'm not actively powering it up, then of course it's going to kind of diminish in capacity. Velociraptor, thank you so much for the donation. I appreciate you stopping by and sharing a happy face. A happy face to you. If I could send emojis right now, I would send you a happy face. So thank you. Bikram, yeah, explaining more. Here you said, so whatever thoughts come, be it OCD or normal, we have to accept all those with no judgment. Like this one is OCD thought, that one is positive, means no judgment and questioning. Uh, so in general, yeah, I would approach stuff in the head as no different than the sounds outside right now. There's so many sounds. Like if I pause and listen to them, I can, hear, actually a wild number of things. Even like beeps, and there's a car horn, and I think there was a dog a moment ago, and there's the sound of water and wind and all sorts of other things I can't identify. And if we, did a similar thing in our brains right now, there's a similar cacophony of sounds and stuff. And we can just have those experiences. They don't have to be something we're sitting there like checking and judging and labeling constantly. It gets exhausting. Deb, thanks for stopping by. Oh, I appreciate you joining us in this space today. I hope your weekend is going well. Fabio said, I love being with my friends, and I do it really often. But I sometimes feel really tired after weeks where I did a lot of social things, and then I get thoughts like I should rest more. Might resting in reaction to these thoughts then be a compulsion? Well, I find, especially with rest, we want to be proactive with it. So you might just be seeing kind of an optimal amount of social interaction that helps you thrive. So something I often suggest to people that I find really useful is to look at your social garden. And we want to water the garden and fertilize it, right? Change the environment so social relationships can thrive and we can thrive. And we nourish the social relationships that really help us grow and thrive. But like any garden, you can fertilize it too much and everything will burn up. You can pour too much water on it and it's not going to help things grow more. It'll just get waterlogged. Maybe some of the vegetables, the friendships will start to rot, get kind of moldy. So we want to do that too proactively. Because likewise, if we're not watering our social garden, then we start to see it withering up. And so then we react to it by watering it. I mean, sure, that's fine, but we could have prevented that by proactively, just consistently giving it what it needs, what helps us thrive. And of course, there's all sorts of things that happen that can affect our garden. And we can adapt to those as they come up. But yeah, what is the amount of social interaction you want to have in your garden? How do you nurse that proactively? How do you set boundaries? Because yeah, maybe you're like, oh, if somebody asked me to go and water the garden, I gotta go do it. But maybe you say like, hey, actually, there's something else I wanna do this evening, or I'm going to the gym this evening, or oh, I just want to enjoy a night taking care of myself tonight. But yeah, everybody go have fun. What I found really helpful with exploring that too was really owning it. So articulating. So if I'm doing something that's for taking care of me, not trying to set it up like, oh, sorry guys, I can't go out tonight, or oh, I've got this other thing I've got to do, or like, oh, there's a thing I need to do tomorrow, so I want to go to bed early or something. No, really owning like, oh, I really want to stay in and do this tonight or this weekend, and like celebrating it while also maintaining that boundary. Bikram, yeah, he said, how many years it's for you in the recovery journey? I always encourage people to be recovered so we can move on to building skills. Because just like, right, I approach it like physical fitness. To be like asking like, yeah, like, have you recovered from your endurance disorder yet? Maybe somebody will feel that they have recovered from their endurance disorder. But that doesn't mean they're going to stop doing cardiovascular exercise. If they stop building skills, then it would only be natural that their capacity and skills go back to a way it was at a different time. But like a runner is not going to see themselves as like in recovery from a disorder, or a swimmer or a weightlifter. And I think we need to make the same change with mental health. Like we framed it entirely around illness. So even when you leave a serious illness, you're still, introduced by it, especially in early years when I would start doing talks, multiple times. I would be introduced as, here is Mark Freeman who struggles with OCD. And then I would like even, the whole talk would be about not having OCD anymore or something like that. And I'd have to explain then, oh, like, no, I'm not, because even they would, introduce as like, oh, in recovery from OCD maybe even, and explain, no, like I'm not, no, like that has just nothing to do with anything. Like I didn't do anything today to be in recovery. I just did the things that I really care about and that I want to grow, and that's how I define it. And me. Oh, Edward, hopping in here with on the question of tricks for retreats or supports, says, wow, that's a big question. I have some Buddhist theological perspectives, not sure would be appropriate for here. Not here to preach, but a big part is gratitude. Yeah, the amazing simple things. So enjoying the simplest things, see that it's all been so meaningful to your life. Funny that you say that. I remember thinking maybe this is the last time I'll ever go down this corridor. And why not just look at it positively? A small moment that's been nice, nothing particularly special, but a moment nonetheless of precious life. Yeah. Edward, thanks for sharing that. Exactly. That sounds really nice. Yeah. Those moments are, yeah, a moment, even in some kind of random hallway or something like that, like in that moment, that is like a complete experience of life. Yeah, that's a useful support to share with everybody. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Jorpenzer, hello. Said recently I've noticed that I'll get social anxiety. Did I say X and Y or come across as X and Y, and the urge to check is massive. What should I do in that moment? Is feeling this urge the goal with non-judgment? Also, are you still offering one-on-one sessions right now? Well, not like right now. Like right now we're doing this. But in yeah, I mean, you have the calendar link. You can access those anytime you'd like. In those moments, when that uncertainty comes up, did I say X and Y, or did it come across as X and Y? What I find most useful, especially with social stuff, this goes back to even what we were just talking about. I go after the consequence, right, that I'm afraid of. So if I notice my brain going, wanting to replay the tape, like go back through a conversation, or trying to control in some way, I just very quickly recognize, oh, that's because I'm afraid of being alone, and just take it there immediately. And what that looks like is noticing, say my brain wanting to check a conversation from yesterday, and I just go, oh, I'm not gonna check that. Like that person's never gonna talk to me again. I'm gonna miss that. Like I really enjoy spending time with them. I do, regret that I said something that'll make them never talk to me again. But yeah, I'll never see them again. And I'm gonna send them, I'm gonna want to see them again, and of course they'll just reject that. But today, I am going to take care of myself, and I am going to share the things I want to share with other people. I recognize maybe I gave something to that person that I actually don't want to give, and so in the next social interaction I have, I'm going to be very mindful of identifying what I value giving, and then giving that. Oh, Edward, not at all. That was a great way to articulate things. Especially, yeah, if you just did a busy conference and we're doing tons of presenting and talking. No, I appreciate so much you dropping by and sharing with everybody. No, we have a lot of people who I know are interested in yeah, meditation and Buddhism and doing meditation retreats and things like that. So, yeah, it's much appreciated for you to share about that. Thank you. Mr. Mitchell 100 said, how do you approach physical pain? I have a very hard time not judging pain whose source I cannot identify. I think pain, physical pain, is one of the really interesting areas to explore on the adventures with cutting out compulsions, because it's almost guaranteed that as somebody who works on cutting out a lot of the mental compulsions that we could say are around like cognitive or emotional pain, that the brain, for whatever reason, is gonna jump to physical pain. And I think often it's because we'll go, oh, but this is real, I've gotta fix it. I've gotta find out where the source is. I've gotta research it. I've gotta go do all of these tests. And so it's something you'll see a lot as people are making a lot of changes and they've cut out a lot of the kind of classic compulsions they may have seen as an issue, is that I'll get a message from somebody that they've been to like this, you know, I've been to 10 doctors and done 100 tests and like nothing's come up and there's this pain. Because that is like almost like it moves from the brain down to wherever, and then we do a bunch of compulsions around pain. So on this journey to, and this to anybody, you're probably not going to take this journey of making changes with mental health without also exploring changes around physical pain. And so I approach them all as just unwanted experiences, right? We have a lot of unwanted experiences. We could have unwanted experiences that are like images and voices and thoughts and feelings. But then within feelings, there's emotions, feelings, and there's physical feelings. And those both can be uncomfortable and unwanted. When you start to explore pain, I find curiosity can be useful at first. There is the video on my channel. It's there kind of targeted at somatic symptoms, like what people often call like somatic OCD and things like that. And it's called Somatic Symptom Busting Exercise Number 1. And if you Google that, it talks about starting to, you know, and it actually uses a meditation exercise to sit and not move. And inevitably there'll be some physical discomfort. And that is an opportunity to start exploring, how do we be curious about this discomfort? How do we look at the reactions we'd have to it to try to control and fix it? And then how do we start to interact differently with it? Because physical pain comes up a lot, so on a long meditation retreat and on a short meditation retreat too, but becomes a useful tool, I find, on, at least for me, on or during practice, to both notice parts of the body that are in pain and parts of the body that aren't, and then explore seeing them both as just the body parts they are, is something that, at least for me, does like weird things in my body. Yeah, Mike, Sharon here. Seeing OCD as a bad habit is the #1 perspective shift that helped me recover. Everybody has changed a bad habit OCD is about how you behave with experiences. Recovery is then changing how you interact with them. I also found it helpful to give up struggling, fighting, or suffering from OCD. That perpetuates the cycle. Of course, you're going to want to avoid control something causing you suffering. Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Mike. Fabio, yeah, you said, might there be a German version of your book in the future? Yes, it exists. It's called Das Mind Workout. I think, yeah, if you look it up, it has a great cover. It's got like the happy guy lifting weights. And so, yeah, it totally exists in paperback. Yep, Das Mind Workout. Jor Panther, you said, that's the radical acceptance concept, isn't it? I just struggle to see how jumping straight to the feared outcome will help long term. Could you explain this concept? I think it's one of these things where I don't think the explanation is ever going to make it sound more appealing. It's going to be about practicing it. Yeah, it's terrifying. We've spent so many decades, hours every day, especially with social anxieties, trying to avoid people disliking us, trying to avoid anything that could make people judge us. And then in that moment, we say to the brain, no, like, that person's going to hate us forever. It's the thing the brain's been trying to help us prevent. What are we talking about? How can we have this person hate us? That's like, we've got to do something. That's all it's been trying to help us do. And so the reason we go there is because we got to start to show the brain it doesn't need to do that anymore. As long as we react to it and fix it, what we're actually doing is teaching the brain that that fear is something it needs to protect us from. And so the mind is just going to keep throwing this stuff up because it's going, I've got to protect you from being judged by others. Okay, well, here are 50 different things you did last night that could be judged by others. Fix them. It's just trying to help you with that goal. But if you show it that the goal is actually, no, it's no longer to avoid being hated by people. Actually, all those people hate us. It's done. I'm not going to fix that anymore. I'm going to go do this other thing that I really care about. Then the brain sees, okay, I guess, because the assumption there is that, if everybody hated us, our life is over. And now we've just said, everybody hates us, I'm going to go eat a sandwich. The brain's like, so if everybody hates us, we can go and eat a sandwich? Okay, then that's not so bad. And then it'll start. It won't be that simple, although the sandwiches are definitely transformative. Bikram, thank you for joining the live session. It's appreciated, Bikram. And Edward as well. No, I look forward to learning a lot from you. Velociraptor said, do you draw a distinction between doing things that you value and things that make you happy? For instance, if you value painting a picture, but you're happy going out with friends. So I would approach happiness differently. I approach happiness as a practice. So I would, if I value doing something, then I'm going to explore how to do that in a way that's the practice of happiness. So actually, like we were talking about earlier, that Edward brought up, and I was mentioning like the enjoying a simple, like enjoying the last day, whereas Edward was mentioning enjoying like a simple moment. Like in whatever we're doing, happiness is there. Often we're covering up the happiness with all of the judging and controlling and stuff we're doing in our heads. So whatever we're doing, if we drop all of that extra judging and checking and controlling we're doing in our heads, I would say the quality of existence is one that's quite naturally happy. only when we're covering that up with all the stuff we do in our heads can we not notice it. Yeah. Well, Mike, thank you for the donation. Yeah. And then we'll see you in a few weeks. We'll see you then. Enjoy it. Mud says, I don't have a question. No questions necessary. 11 Tree Lover, you said, do you do work with unconditional acceptance with core fears? I don't know what that means. Northwest said, can you explain how you might approach a high-functioning GAD? So generalized anxiety disorder, constant fear toward many things, including fear of fear, running through life trying to fix it all, achieving a lot but never present. Well, yeah, so I wouldn't approach high-functioning or low-functioning acronyms. There's a lot of acronyms we could label as low-functioning. I think of many three-letter organizations. So they're low-functioning. I always look first at what we want to grow and be doing more of in life. And then, because people can collect all sorts of acronyms. Regardless of the acronyms we collect, growing what we want to grow in life and doing the things we want to do is going to be about learning how to have experiences. So those experiences might be like fear of fear, for instance. And instead of doing all the stuff we're doing around that, give that time and energy to the things we actually care about. And it's those things that we're going to build exercises around. So say like if I'm working with somebody, what we build exercises around are those. So again, thinking like physical fitness. Like if somebody came and said, hey, I have a high functioning mobility disorder. It's like I can do lots of things, but I'm very stiff. So I'm not going to go after that problem. I'm going to be curious about, well, what are the things you want to be doing if you had more mobility with your body? So if you could move differently, then what would you do? And then we would look at, oh, okay, so what are the exercises to do that thing you want to do? And we would just build around that so that the exercises and the focus of the work is not on a problem or defeating an enemy. It's not about, oh, we've got to fight this monster, and success is defeating the monster. Success is building that skill the person wants to build. That enables us to measure progress because each step in that direction is success. Whereas if we fight a monster and measure success that way, then we always need more monsters. Oh, Joe Penzo, I look forward to your review on the ego death sandwiches with extra pickles. Monty D, yeah, you said you just watched the Geography of Recovery video. Oh, thanks for checking it out. Yeah, I'd say, and that, yeah, Geography of Recovery video, especially if anybody hasn't seen that, I'd say maybe it's 2 or 3 years old. But yeah, I would still solidly say that format, really useful to follow in terms of, doing the work to cut out a bunch of compulsions, but then how do you walk away from that edge of that cliff or that identification with the illness? Ads Bohemian, I appreciate the love. Thank you. Erica, I say, can we do the feared thing is definitely going to come true with feared future events, like the fear of a loved one dying or the fear of falling into poverty or something like that. It really helps me. So what I do with that though, what I find, and maybe this is a necessary quirk, like it's something I always have to put in the past. Because I think as long as my brain assumes it's in the future, it's like, well, we're gonna fix it. So definitely when I'm applying that skill, I'll present it to myself as, well, it already happened, like this thing. And usually it's doable because, so say like fear of falling into poverty. So I had all sorts of compulsions around the fear of, like, I'm gonna get like a random letter or something that's just gonna tell me, like, oh, like you've lost all of your money, or like you owe some fine, or you commit some crime, you're gonna get some incredible fine for, something like that. It really helped to then say, like, oh, well, that's already happened, or like the thing that's caused that has happened. So yeah, so the fear is inevitable, but because of something that already happened, that I know happened. Because then for whatever reason, then my brain is like, oh no, this is done. It's baked in. Ayush, he said, why mental suffering people can't be as successful people? As I failed my exams due to OCD, I saw many people left their work who struggle with mental health. What do you think? Well, I'm sorry you had a struggle with your exam. Right? It's difficult. Like, there are often experiences where, yeah, we're caught up in the struggle and it overlaps with something we want to be doing, but we're giving so much time and energy to the compulsions and to the brain that, yeah, we don't have it to give to other things. But these struggles are things we can build skills around. These are experiences we can make changes around. Like, OCD is something we can leave behind. So yeah, if you see it interfering, that's a great moment to say, okay, I see how this is getting in the way, and I want to make some changes here. And then practicing those new skills. Johnny, yeah, he said, is there supplements you recommend? No, I don't know of any supplement I've ever heard anybody taking that I didn't uh, think was a compulsion. Yeah, the around mental health. Like, because people send me all sorts of messages about all sorts of things, usually in the context of assuming that I would think it was a useful thing. Like, people will list out, oh, like I'm already doing these cold showers and I take this inositol thing, and oh, I saw on this podcast this person said you should take this, and I'm doing this, and I only look at red lights or blue lights and only at this time, and upside down, and I do cold showers but only on Wednesdays, and like the like massive stack of different things that people collect, because then they'll be like, oh, I'm doing all of this, but still, when the thought pops up, I have to do all of these compulsions. And yeah, because none of that stuff changes the way you interact with an experience. The only thing that changes how we interact with experiences is us changing how we interact with experiences. Absolutely, there may be some things you take that support you in making those changes. There's a lot of research showing that even placebos do pretty damn well compared to all sorts of other things. So, yeah, I'm not going to say like that people don't see results from taking something, because we see that consistently with mental health. The placebo performs weirdly well with even serious mental health issues. There's all sorts of research to explore and interesting questions to ask around that. So yeah, absolutely, people may take things and they may find that useful within making changes, but don't forget the changes. So even asking like what's a good supplement separate from whatever change it is you want to make, yeah, is probably going to be really unhelpful. Oh, Erica, I didn't know you can hear that. Yeah, it said, what is the sound we keep hearing, like a voice coming over a loudspeaker? There are people selling things, food, out on the street. But so I know what the one is, but the one we just heard a moment ago, I don't know what he's selling. I don't know, I haven't stopped to eat it, and I haven't seen it. But yeah, they're food sellers. So, and they're on either bicycles or motorbikes, but driving very slowly. And then there's a speaker on the back, and actually the back is like an oven heater kind of thing. I think it's an actual oven. Like it looks like it's a steel box. But yeah, maybe it's just keeping things warm in there. And yeah. So if you want something, yeah, when we hear come by later, we'll pick you up something. Huiyan Xin, Edward, it's very nicely said. Oh, thank you. Letting other thoughts, feelings unrelated to the here and now affect how you experience things when fundamentally an act doesn't need to be that way. Yeah, meditation trains the mind to be aware and observe that happening and adjust back to the present and do what it is you're doing clear. Exactly. Yeah, thanks for explaining it like that. So yeah, everybody wondering about meditation and why we would do a practice like that. Like Edwards explained it really well right here. Because it does change it. Like it absolutely, coming back to everyday life after something like a retreat where we're doing, I don't know, like maybe 4 50-minute sits a day, things like that. And like you're really trying, you're putting effort into practicing the practice all the time throughout the day. Yeah, the mind is noticeably different. And that'll fade. Like I'm looking forward to keeping my practice up, and really intentionally trying to do, one thing at a time and being present for that. But of course, there's so much to react to and so much to do that the quality that comes after an intense meditation retreat, it'll fade with time. Mm-hmm. But it's useful. Monty, he said, I have a situation when I find myself doing something like judging. There comes a point when I catch myself doing something that I think I should not do, like judging. Then a voice comes in my head saying, you should not be doing that. And then I get concerned. And if I do, I feel bad. And Monty, do you have a question about that? Oh, Northwest, you're welcome. Everybody, we're gonna wrap things up. We've hit the 2-hour mark, which is a good time. We'll wrap things up here shortly. Fabio, yes, is daydreaming actually a form of mindlessness? Or can it even be something that can be enjoyed mindfully? Yeah, so I'd really look at whether someone's being intentional about it. So if it's mindlessness, like say for example, somebody actually is doing something, like they're daydreaming, like say they're cleaning and they're daydreaming, and they didn't even intentionally choose to start daydreaming. It just like the brain was like, oh yeah, what about this? And we could be on stage at a concert and oh yeah, like this would be happening. And then there would be a unicorn and cheese. Oh, and like, it's just off running. Yeah, totally. Like great example of mindlessness. Like we're almost just doing this kind of disservice to ourselves, being like, oh, but it's daydreaming. Yeah, okay. But it is just like us, like not being where we are. It's really useful to, I always describe it, what helped me was seeing it as like doing the thing I'm doing. Like it's really beneficial to me to do the thing I'm doing. Now, say I'm exploring, for instance, writing fiction. Then I may intentionally sit down to kind of like daydream. But I'm gonna do that with, say a pad of paper, with a specific goal, with time set aside to like really, like say, let's explore the possibilities of this plot or this character or what would happen in this scenario and see it and imagine it and picture it. But that is the thing I've chosen to do. So I wouldn't even really see that as daydreaming. It has the same quality though, of imagining scenarios in my mind. But I'm doing that on purpose, very intentionally, where I want to take it. Lewis, hi, said, in relationships, I obsess over how I feel, which makes me lose interest. Even if in the beginning I was interested. The cycle keeps repeating. I really want to have healthy relationships. It's great you see what obsessing does, right? Because the more we want to get a clean and certain feeling, we're always going to have more uncertainty. And so you see it very practically how that works. Yep. More you obsess, less you're going to have the feelings you want to have. It'll be fun to look at, like, why are you obsessing? Like, what's the goal you're chasing there? What's the thing you're trying to prevent? And what if you don't have to chase that goal? What if you don't have to prevent that fear? What would be a more useful goal to measure or move towards in a relationship? Vegan Knowledge, hello, welcome. Yeah, Fabio points out something really important about school. Good grades or success can be surrounded by mental illness. I learned a certain amount of time to not fail exams. It was a compulsion. And though I was successful on the outside, I was falling inwards, or failed inwards. Okay, thanks for, I think, explaining that. 11 Tree. Oh, I see. 11 Tree Lover, you're talking to Monty. And so Monty, 11 Tree Lover, explained, Mark answered that for me before. If you're too concerned about not doing compulsions, you start doing compulsions about that. It's about how much time I'm spending in my head more than I need to avoid these compulsions. And yeah, so I see we've come to the end of the questions. And so Monty, yeah, maybe I'll share as a thing to wrap up here, because this is really relevant to everybody. Because we do talk about making these changes, which can get us into, like, oh no, there are these bad things and I shouldn't do them. But then we start to treat that as this other contamination. And then we're obsessing about making sure we don't have this bad compulsion contamination. And then, of course, we do a bunch of compulsions around it. If you notice yourself caught up in something you don't want to be doing, right? Spending your time and energy, whether it's in your head or out in the world doing something, and you're like, I actually don't value this. This isn't how I want to be me in the world. Celebrate that awareness. It's so useful to celebrate that we can see that. Absolutely, we'll work on getting ahead of that so we don't even end up in those situations. But it's so effective on that journey to make the compulsions okay. To actually recognize that there's so much momentum there. We have so much habit energy behind that, just pushing us along. And we have a brain that is designed to make things easier, to do things on reflex. So it's going to do stuff it's done before. You're going to fall back into old habits as you make changes. You can learn how to play a new sport. On the way there, though, yeah, don't get upset if your body keeps trying to play the old sport. It'll take time to get good and skilled at the new one when you've put in as much practice as you put into the old one. Yeah. So in the meantime, celebrate that awareness. It's amazing when we can see that we're spending our time and energy on things we don't want to spend it on. And then we can make changes. So let's do that. This week, let's celebrate our awareness. If we see ourselves, spending time and energy on things we don't want to spend it on, that's incredible that we can notice that. And then we can take a step in a different direction. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody who donated. I really appreciate the support. Thank you, everybody who stopped by, who shared, about the adventures going on in your brain. Also, I noticed we had a lot of people sharing this evening about things that were really helpful to you. And so thank you, everybody, for that. It's so, wonderful that, we have so many people working on these skills and these practices of having brains. And then you're sharing that with each other. So I really appreciate that. Huiyanshin, Edward, thank you for stopping by. I'm touched that you dropped by. Martina, Yes, question here. Okay, we got one final question. Said, I asked you about this earlier. Oh, I don't remember this. But I'm curious if you think that someone who works on themselves, a specialist help is necessary, or only when you know that you cannot recognize compulsions, etc. Oh, I mean, if you asked it earlier, did I answer it earlier? Because I won't have a, like, that won't be a question that I'll have a, any kind of yes or no answer to. Yeah, I mean, research-wise, some studies show, working with a specialist more useful than self-help. Other studies show self-help can be more useful than working with a specialist. So it's very one or the other. It's whichever you're going to find most effective for doing the things you want to do. And with that, we will wrap things up. Enjoy everybody having a week, 2 weeks ahead of you. There's holidays coming up. I plan to do a live stream on the 31st. There, Erica, right now, it's noodles, I believe. If you want noodles, the guy going by who is selling noodles out of the back of his motorbike is going by. I already had dinner, but I bet the noodles are great. With the new year coming on, I hope everybody has some delicious noodles. But I do plan to do our next Brain Tech Support Live just before the start of the new year, because we can talk about, reflecting on the year past and celebrating that, and being kind to ourselves with any goals for the year ahead. So let's talk about that and explore that next time. And until then, thank you everybody for stopping by, and I'll see you soon.